Chapter 498. To some extent, Li Hongyuan was definitely a man of action. If he said he would enter the palace, he would enter the palace. However, Li Hongyuan didn't go to see Lu Qingdi. Instead, he brought people to the Jade Essence Palace to show concern for his foster mother who was in poor health. Wasn't that reasonable? If he went to see Lu Qingdi, it would be difficult to explain how he found out about his illness. It might even arouse unnecessary suspicion. However, noble consort Su was different. If Lu Qingdi knew that Li Hongyuan brought Gong Jiu into the palace, he would definitely go to the Jade Essence Palace if he wanted to. All emperors wanted to live a long life. Naturally, they would be more willing to live a little longer. When noble consort Su heard that Li Hongyuan went to see her, she wasn't as happy as she was originally. She was also puzzled. Why did this adopted son suddenly change? He had ignored her for a long time. After a long time, she understood that her adopted son was really throwing a tantrum with her because he had a bad temper. If he was really angry, he should have calmed down a long time ago. There must be another reason. In the beginning, she was stupid. She thought that if she did her best, this adopted son would treat her with the same importance and that her position in his heart was irreplaceable. Now that she looked at it, it was just a joke. The imperial family had always been filled with ingrates. In fact, her adopted son wouldn't suddenly change. It was just that she was used by Li Hongyuan as a raft. However, noble consort Su continued to act as usual. Yuan He is here. Why aren't you coming in? She seemed unusually happy, tears welling up in her eyes. Li Hongyuan was still calm and walked in with an extraordinary bearing. This son greets mother. Noble consort Su was a little dazed. Seeing this son again, it was as if a lifetime had passed. It had only been a few months. Last year, he went to Jiangnan for half a year, but she didn't have such an illusion. Why? Why? Of course, it was because their feelings for each other had faded. They didn't even mention it. More importantly, noble consort Su didn't receive any benefits directly or indirectly because of him. Noble consort Su couldn't think of these things. Or rather, she didn't want to think about it. Yuan He is finally willing to come and see Imperial Mother. Imperial consort Su's voice seemed to carry a hint of complaint, but also unconcealable joy. Li Hongyuan waved his hand, and the palace maids beside noble consort Su retreated to the side. Li Hongyuan stepped forward and sat beside noble consort Su's couch. Perhaps it was to let Li Hongyuan see how terrible her current situation was. Imperial consort Su didn't dress up. It was more uncomfortable to sit up, so she simply lay down. It had to be said that even though Imperial consort Su had her suspicions, she still subconsciously wanted to obtain Li Hongyuan's care and benefit from it. In reality, she had never been clearer than in the past few months. She had a good relationship with her adopted son, and her adopted son would speak up for her from time to time. The attention and benefits she could receive from the emperor were much more than she had expected. If her relationship with her adopted son was still the same as before, then even if something happened again and again, she would definitely not be in such a sorry state now. The favor she had received in the past was more due to this adopted son than she had expected. This made imperial concubine Su feel very uncomfortable. At the same time, because of her current sorry state, she was full of resentment towards this adopted son. That's right, resentment. If this ingrate hadn't been so heartless, she wouldn't be in such a state now. Li Hongyuan's elbows rested on his knees, and his hands naturally drooped inwards. He leaned forward and leaned closer to Imperial consort Su. With a faint smile, he slightly lowered his voice. As expected, you've become so used to pretending that your bones have become hypocritical. However, for the sake of benefits, it's just pretending. It's not like you'll lose a piece of flesh, so why not? Imperial Consort Su. However, it's actually quite hard to live with a hypocritical mask for 10 or 20 years. It's just that. Li Hongyuan flicked the hair that had slid in front of him. I just slightly stopped cooperating, and you became like this. It's really unsightly. Imperial Consort Su's pupils contracted sharply. Even if she was as calm as she was at this time, her eyes were also filled with fear. In Imperial Consort Su's eyes, even if this adopted son of hers was malicious and had a changeable temperament, it was only on the surface. Inside, he was still pure and even harmless. At least for her, wanting to control this adopted son in the palm of her hand was not a simple matter. Even if he might not be obedient on the surface, in the end, he would basically act according to her wishes. Now, reality had fiercely slapped her in the face. This was not the cruelty on the surface, it was more frightening in the bones. She had a pair of sharp eyes, but she had never seen through this person. How long did he continue to pretend like this? Imperial Consort Su stiffly pulled the corner of her mouth. What is Yuan talking about? How come Mu Fei doesn't understand? Li Hongyuan clicked his tongue, appearing a little impatient. Ben Wang isn't feigning civility with you anymore. Why do you continue to wrong yourself? So Jin Qin Wang is saying that we're not the same. The smile at the corner of Li Hongyuan's mouth became more obvious. Do you really think so? Your biological son, I can deal with him however I want. After I'm done, you still help me reprimand him. So, Imperial Consort Su thinks that Ben Wang is the same as you? I only called you Mu Fei, that's all. Do you really think that I'm like you, wronging myself every day? You don't know how carefree I am sometimes. But for you, it shouldn't matter. In any case, you're already used to it. Used to wronging your biological son, your biological daughter, and yourself. Occasionally, Ben Wang will feel quite happy when he sees it. Imperial Consort Su's complexion instantly turned ashen, and her breathing became hurried. It was as if she could die at any time. Li Hongyuan sat up straight again and lifted his chin towards Gongzhou. Let Imperial Consort take a look. Yes. Gongzhou respectfully responded and stepped forward, wanting to clasp Imperial Consort Su's wrist. Scram, you're not allowed to touch Ben Wang. Since they had completely shed all pretenses of cordiality, how could Imperial Consort Su believe the person Li Hongyuan brought? Gongzhou also obediently retreated a little. Why do you have to do this? If you don't raise him properly, how can you watch your grandson be born? That's a child you've been looking forward to for many years. Imperial Consort Su's expression changed slightly. She didn't know if he was simply mentioning this, or if the poison in her son's body was related to him. It was also the sterilization powder, so it was difficult for her not to connect the two. However, she had drugged her son more than 10 years ago. How could he have known at that time? No, that's not right. He might have found out later. That's right. Ben Wang has been looking forward to it for many years. Originally, I was also looking forward to you, Yuan. Unfortunately, I'm afraid that I'll never have that chance. Li Hongyuan nodded. Ben Wang quite agrees with your words. Imperial Consort Su still couldn't figure out what Li Hongyuan meant. However, one thing was certain, and that was that she absolutely couldn't treat this adopted son the same way as before. Yuan, you've really surprised me. What's the matter? Do you also have thoughts about the throne? Or have you always had them? Unfortunately, no matter how good your imperial father is to you, he won't hand over the river to you. The throne can be any of your brothers, but it definitely won't be yours. Oh. Li Hongyuan remained calm and unruffled. Why? Why? Imperial concubine Su's voice suddenly rose. It was abnormally sharp, and her face was as ferocious as a malicious spirit. Because you're a Japanese. Your mother died, and you were cut out from her stomach. Ha ha ha. Imperial concubine Su laughed crazily. There was malice in her laughter, but also endless satisfaction from revenge. To be honest, none of the consorts who had seen the imperial noble consort back then weren't jealous. The emperor's kindness to the imperial noble consort was really ingrained in his bones. Once, imperial noble consort Su was very ill and couldn't see the emperor even once. However, the imperial noble consort Su only had a slight cold and cough, and the emperor never left her side. The imperial noble consort Su changed again and again. How could imperial consort Su remain indifferent? When she first took over raising Li Hongyuan, she more or less wanted to strangle him to death. However, in the end, reason prevailed over everything because she knew how much benefit it would be for her to raise this child. She had always thought that those emotions from back then were gone. It turned out that they had been hidden very deeply and had slowly rotted away. At this moment, they suddenly burst out like a flash flood and tsunami, completely drowning her reason for a time. That bitch dominated the emperor when she was alive. After so many years of death, she still dominated the emperor's heart. So what if the emperor treasured her so much? Didn't he strangle her to death with his own hands? She deserved it. She deserved it because she was too greedy. As for you, you bitch, if I had known this would happen, would have strangled you to death long ago. Li Hongyuan didn't look at the expressions of the palace servants who served him. Anyway, they were already dead. Moreover, they were just a few palace servants who would never be able to enter his eyes. He just looked at imperial concubine Su. For more than 20 years, he had just casually provoked her and completely exposed himself. Today, he entered the palace only for that man. In the end, he didn't want to pretend to be polite with this woman anymore. This gain was beyond his imagination. Mother, is what you said true? Li Hongyuan's voice was relatively soft, as if it was filled with endless sadness and disbelief. Imperial concubine Su felt that something was wrong and her outburst of emotions finally calmed down a little. Imperial concubine, why don't you take a look at the door? It's a big surprise. Li Hongyuan's body was sitting sideways, and his hair covered all the expressions on his face. Imperial concubine Su suddenly turned her head. At the door, on the emperor's dragon robe, there was a flying golden dragon. In the entire Qi Yuan, only one person could wear it. At this moment, Lu Qingdi was furious. His eyes were wide open, and he looked like a furious lion. Imperial concubine Su was scared out of her wits. Emperor, Emperor, Lu Qingdi rushed forward as if there was wind under his feet. Li Hongyuan understood the situation very well and stood up to step back. Bitch, Lu Qingdi raised his hand and slapped her. Looking at the wind from his palm, it was obvious that he had used 120% of his strength. Imperial concubine Su subconsciously wanted to dodge, but her current physical condition didn't allow it. She took a solid slap, then a second slap, and then a third. Imperial concubine Su could only cover her head and scream. She begged for mercy, but before she could say anything, she was slapped back and couldn't speak. After being beaten violently by Lu Qingdi, Imperial concubine Su couldn't resist anymore. She lay on the bed and was dying. Li Hongyuan stepped forward and grabbed Lu Qingdi's hand. Father, do you want to kill mother? Imperial concubine Su. Only then did the furious Lu Qingdi come back to his senses. He looked at Li Hongyuan and saw that his face was silent. His eyes even revealed a deathly stillness. Suddenly, he was at a loss. Yuan, Li Hongyuan let go of his hand as if he didn't want to look at him at all. His eyes fell on Imperial concubine Su. Imperial concubine Su happened to meet his eyes, so only Imperial concubine Su could see the true ruthlessness and ridicule in his eyes. No matter what, Imperial concubine Su has raised me for so many years. When I was sick, she took care of me tirelessly. From food to clothes, as long as it was good, she would give it to me first. No matter what her original purpose was, these are all facts and occupy too many memories. Li Hongyuan seemed to have fallen into a memory. It should have been warm and sweet, but when it came from his mouth, it was filled with endless bitterness. If Imperial concubine Su hadn't known his true colors before, she would have been deceived by him at this moment. The fear in her heart deepened. Li Hongyuan, you bastard, who are you pretending for? Imperial concubine Su blurted out subconsciously. Because of Li Hongyuan's interruption, Lu Qingdi, who had regained his rationality a little, heard this and became angry again. He raised his hand and was about to hit her again, but was stopped by Li Hongyuan again. Father, you killed my birth mother, and now you want to kill my adoptive mother? His voice was filled with sadness and sadness. This sentence almost made Lu Qingdi vomit blood. You on her, it's not like that. Don't listen to this bitch's nonsense. It's her, she's jealous of your mother. Don't listen to her, don't listen to her. He tried to explain incoherently. Li Hongyuan forced a smile. Is that so? Then, what is it? Father, tell me. Lu Qingdi opened his mouth but couldn't say anything. Fabricate nonsense. Talk nonsense. Try to fool him as much as possible. Father, you're hesitating. Then what else is there to say? The last bit of hope in Li Hongyuan's eyes seemed to have been completely destroyed. He didn't want to say anything more to Lu Qingdi and looked at Imperial concubine Su again. I always thought that mother truly treated me as her own son, but it turns out that it wasn't. In comparison, you hate me so much that you can't wait for me to die. This son begs Imperial Father for one last thing. Imperial Father, please give Imperial Mother a way out. Lu Qingdi's lips trembled as if he was struggling. Okay. Thank you, Father. With this, I'll repay Mother's kindness of raising me. This is the last time I'll call you this, Imperial concubine. After Li Hongyuan finished speaking, he flicked his sleeves and left. His footsteps seemed to be a little hurried, and he even forgot the last etiquette. Gong Jiu also followed him out. But not long after, Gong Jiu turned back and saluted neither too quickly nor too slowly. His Highness originally wanted to take me to see Imperial concubine Su's health. Even now, His Highness still can't let go of Imperial concubine Su. Please let me take your pulse to fulfill His Highness's last filial piety. Imperial concubine Su almost bit through her lips to restrain herself from blurting out some words. After all, Lu Qingdi was watching covetously from the side. Now that he had been completely deceived by Li Hongyuan, that bastard, he wouldn't listen to a single word she said. If she dared to say anything inappropriate, she didn't know what kind of consequences it would bring. Gong Jiu took Imperial concubine Su's pulse step by step and prescribed medicine. It didn't matter whether he knew how to use the prescription or not. He tidied up the medicine box. Your Majesty, I'll take my leave first. Wait a moment. Lu Qingdi didn't forget the reason why he first came to the Jade Essence Palace. He just didn't expect to encounter such a thing. The imperial concubine he thought was virtuous and virtuous turned out to be a snake in human skin. He had been miserably deceived by her all these years. More importantly, she exposed the wrong thing he did in the past. The thing that Lu Qingdi didn't want to recall the most in his life, and the thing that he even deceived himself to forget, was so easily exposed. According to Lu Qingdi's own thoughts, this woman must let him have a taste of living a life worse than death. But because he had already agreed to his son's request, he didn't know what his son thought of him now. If he left first, he would break his promise later. Perhaps even their last friendship would be broken. Since Lu Qingdi asked him to stay, Gong Jiu naturally didn't dare to not stay, so he quietly stood aside. Luqingdi looked at Imperial concubine Su with heavy eyes. If it weren't for Yuan's pleading, I might have cut you alive. No matter how strong a person's mental endurance was, they couldn't help but be afraid in the face of death. Imperial concubine Su shrank, and her teeth were chattering. She didn't think that Li Hongyuan kept her alive for the sake of their last mother-son relationship. But now, she was indeed alive because of him. No one wanted to die if they could live. Therefore, no matter how much malice she harbored against Li Hongyuan in her heart, she couldn't say it out loud. A person in a rage could do anything. For example, this man strangled his beloved woman to death because of anger. Compared with that woman, she was nothing at all. Therefore, it was better not to provoke this man. Luqingdi glanced at the people present, and his eyes fell on the servants of the Jade Palace. Just like what they heard from Princess Lu last time, these people were trembling. They couldn't even beg for mercy because they knew it was useless. In contrast, Imperial concubine Su's chief maid was dead silent. She was lucky to escape last time, but since then, she had been living a bad life. It wasn't because Imperial concubine Su treated her badly, but because she knew a secret she shouldn't know. She was in a panic all day long. Now, she even had a feeling that she was finally going to be free. As for exchanging the secret she heard before for a chance to survive this time. Don't have such a beautiful dream. Right now, she could no longer speak. Furthermore, she was illiterate. Thinking about it, how ironic was it that the most important palace made by the imperial concubine side was illiterate. Luqingdi finally looked at Yu Zhongqing, who was standing at the door. Deal with all these people. Yes. Even if Yu Zhongqing heard Imperial concubine Su's words just now, he only heard it. Not to mention that he was secretly laughing at Prince Jin. Even if he wasn't, this matter had nothing to do with him. No matter who the person sitting on the throne was, whether it was auspicious or not, it wasn't something he could comment on. All the irrelevant people were taken out. Luqingdi looked at Imperial concubine Su coldly. From now on, without Jin's permission, you are not allowed to step out of the Jade Palace. Su, sure, you have always been a smart person. If you don't want to implicate third, you know what to do. Imperial concubine Su used the last of her strength to clench her fist. Qinxia thanks your majesty for your grace. Humph. Luqingdi snorted coldly and left with a flick of his sleeve. Thus, the three people who also knew the secret followed Luqingdi out of the Jade Palace. Moreover, it wasn't the first time Luqingdi met Gongzhou, so he knew a thing or two about his temperament. This person, if it wasn't about the illness, he wouldn't easily open his mouth. Yu Zhongqing was promoted by him and was deeply trusted by him. Then there was the head steward beside him, who had been with him for a long time. It could be said that he was the person who had been with Luqingdi for the longest time. To some extent, no one had a deeper relationship with him than Luqingdi. In the Jade Palace, only Imperial concubine Su was left. If it wasn't for the slight rise and fall of the person lying on the bed with her breathing, one would think that she was already dead. After a while, Imperial concubine Su forced herself to sit up. She tidied up her clothes and hair. Although her hands were trembling, they were still crossed on her lap. She quietly looked ahead, still trying to maintain her dignity and nobility as an imperial concubine. As she sat, Imperial concubine Su laughed neurotically. Li Hongyuan, no matter what your purpose is, let me go today. Come, I will make you regret it for the rest of your life. Originally, I raised you. Regardless of whether I was sincere or not, you have called me mother for so long. I wanted to let you be an idle prince and still have your honor and glory, but you turned out to be an ingrate and even bit me. Naturally, you can't blame me for being ruthless. Imperial concubine Su laughed louder and louder, and the more she laughed, the crazier she became. In such a big hall, it was creepy to hear. Lu Qingdi didn't go to other places but stayed in the imperial garden. He gave Yu Zhongqing a look. Yu Zhongqing understood and quickly left to make sure that the surroundings were safe. After that, Lu Qingdi asked about Li Hongyuan's situation intermittently, just like a good father who cared about his son. Gong Jiu naturally told him everything he knew. However, in a place that couldn't be seen, Gong Jiu's fingertips were pressing on Lu Qingdi's wrist. He was multitasking. However, it took a long time to feel the pulse. Gong Jiu's eyebrows slightly frowned as he switched from left hand to right hand. How is it? Seeing this, Lu Qingdi's heart was in his mouth, afraid that the last glimmer of hope would be shattered. In the end, Gong Jiu's eyebrows relaxed. Your Majesty, don't worry. Everything is fine. Everything is fine. Lu Qingdi's voice rose a few notches, full of disbelief. Your Majesty, it's true. You know, although His Highness's temper looks bad, you know his nature better than anyone. However, only a few people in the world can see through him. What others see is just on the surface. Those who don't know always like to use this to scare more people. His Highness is innocent. Lu Qingdi naturally understood that his so-called poisoning was actually just a superficial phenomenon. In essence, there was nothing at all. It was just that the imperial physician he found didn't see the problem at all. Lu Qingdi recognized Gong Jiu's medical skills, but as an emperor, he always had doubts. In the past, he would always ask another imperial physician to take a look at things related to Gong Jiu. However, it was different this time. He completely believed Gong Jiu's words. After all, he was Yuan's man, and Yuan's biggest reliance was Lu Qingdi. If his body was really poisoned, there was no reason for his man to hide it. Knowing that his body was fine, Lu Qingdi clenched his fists. In this case, it was time to deal with the person who dared to play tricks under his nose. I'm relieved to hear that. By the way, since I've entered the palace once, it's convenient for me to have a look. Yes, Your Majesty. After a moment of silence, Gong Jiu said, Your Majesty's body is fine. Ask the imperial physician to prescribe some warm and nourishing medicine. It doesn't need too much, at most 3 doses. At most, the symptoms of poisoning would disappear after 3 doses of medicine. At this time, Lu Qingdi was completely relieved. Gong Jiu, your medical skills are outstanding at such a young age. Do you want to enter the Imperial Hospital? How about I let you take charge of the Imperial Hospital? Lu Qingdi was attracted to a talent like Gong Jiu every time he saw him. This time, he couldn't help but think about it. If Gong Jiu was here, he wouldn't have to be anxious for such a long time. Your Majesty, Your Highness, as for me, I'm indebted to Your Highness for recognizing my talent. It's up to Your Highness to decide where to stay. If you want to poach me, fine. You can talk to the master of the courtyard. This wall skirt means that I have no autonomy at all. Lu Qingdi was silent. At this time, he didn't dare to speak to his son. Forget it. We'll talk about it later. Lu Qingdi waved his hand. You can leave the palace first. Yes, I'll take my leave. Gong Jiu took the medicine box and left calmly. As soon as he left, Lu Qingdi's face changed again. Have I been too kind in the past? In this palace, someone dares to play with me. Your Majesty, fortunately, the people of Prince Jin's mansion are skilled and didn't let the behind-the-scenes person succeed. Lu Qingdi snorted coldly. Before, he was afraid of breaking the vases, but now he had no scruples. Yu Qing, Your Majesty. Yu Zhongqing quickly appeared and stood respectfully in front of Lu Qingdi. Lu Qingdi whispered a few words, and Yu Zhongqing took the order and left. Gong Jiu didn't stay long behind Li Hongyuan, so it didn't take long for him to catch up with the carriage of Prince Jin's mansion. After returning to Prince Jin's mansion, Li Hongyuan looked indifferent. There was no trace of the emotion he had in Jade Palace. Gong Jiu saw it. He wasn't sure if his master already knew about it, or he hid it in his heart and didn't want Princess to find out. However, no matter which one it was, in short, the fact that his master was a devil must not be leaked out from his mouth. In fact, according to his master's temper, this matter wouldn't affect him at all. No matter what his background was, it couldn't stop him from doing what he wanted to do. Because the matter wasn't over, Gong Jiu naturally followed him to the main courtyard. "You're back. How's the situation?" When Jingwan saw them, she put down the scissors in her hand and washed her hands. Li Hongyuan pulled Gong Jiu to sit down on one side. First, he briefly explained the matter of Jade Palace. Although he didn't say it clearly, Jingwan understood what he meant. Her eyes were full of surprise. "Did you do something?" A person like noble consort Su can't lose control of her emotions so easily, right? Not to mention speaking without thinking. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees more clearly. Li Hongyuan was slightly stunned. Yes, that woman absolutely couldn't be underestimated. How could she lose control to that extent after being stabbed by him? So, his eyes fell on Gong Jiu. Gong Jiu immediately knelt down on one knee. "Your Highness, please forgive me. I've been studying some drugs recently. Before entering the palace, I just habitually put some on my body. This drug is usually useless to people. But when people's emotions are abnormal, they will be affected to different degrees and become somewhat uncontrollable. If the will is slightly weak, they will speak and act according to their true emotions. So, it was really just an accident." However, for Li Hongyuan, accidents that were not in his control, no matter the final result was good or bad, were not allowed, especially when it was caused by his own people. "Explain what happened later, and then go to receive your punishment." "Yes, sir." Gong Jiu explained everything in detail and then excused himself. So, the emperor should have been coerced. But now there's no need to worry about the consequences. The person who played the trick should be found soon. That has nothing to do with us. Li Hongyuan had no interest in caring about his father's feelings. What about the original follow-up plan? Do we still need to use it? The imperial noble consort's religious ceremony should be done sooner rather than later. The original plan should be postponed. So, let's do the religious ceremony first. As for him, since he's fine, there's no need to involve him. I believe that the imperial noble consort doesn't want to be involved with him unless it's necessary. Well, we'll do as you say. Speaking of which, there was a reason why it took so long to complete. Although Lu Qingdi attached great importance to this project and sent people to each altar, and Li Hongyuan also took the opportunity to place many people there, because there were too many altars, there would always be people who would do everything possible to destroy them. Naturally, there would be times when it was impossible to guard against, so the construction period would be delayed. Because the general progress had to be constant and the final completion had to be completed at the same time, the progress of each altar had to be summarized at all times. One place was delayed, another place was delayed, and one place was delayed. When one place was delayed, the other 80 places were delayed as well. The construction started on the 2nd of February, and the auspicious day for the final completion of the altars was chosen in late August. It took more than half a year, and the effort spent was more than expected. It could only be said that there were more people than expected, and they didn't want this matter to be completed perfectly. In the end, it was because of Lu Qingdi's toughness that it could be completed. If it weren't for him, Li Hongyuan might not be able to achieve his goal no matter how much he did in secret. After all, the scope involved was too wide, and it was too difficult for Li Hongyuan to control it all. Li Hongyuan handed in a well-behaved memorial. Lu Qingdi saw that the handwriting on the memorial had become as plain as before, and it was no longer as outstanding and handsome as when he was in high spirits when he got married. Luchingdi couldn't help but feel distressed. Before, when he didn't know about it, he restrained himself because he sensed his intention. Now that he knew about it, was he really going to keep quiet completely? Luchingdi's head hurt, and he didn't know what to do. Moreover, he couldn't ask his ministers about it. After all, the fewer people who knew about it, the better. In other words, the fewer people who knew that he killed the imperial noble consort, the better. If no one mentioned it, he might be able to continue deceiving himself. However, Luchingdi knew very well that Li Hongyuan had known about it. If he really wanted to gloss it over, he would be ruthlessly exposed just by looking into his eyes. Moreover, he didn't dare to see his son now. Yes, he didn't dare to. He was afraid of his son's questioning. Therefore, he wanted to bury the hatchet with his son, but he didn't want to face it. There was a strong contradiction in his heart. However, his son might not want to see him, so he let it be for the time being. Luchingdi wrote a big permission on Li Hongyuan's memorial, and at the same time, he gave full power to Li Hongyuan to deal with this matter. Li Hongyuan could use anyone he wanted, and he didn't even need to submit a memorial to him. This matter was even mentioned in the imperial court. In other words, he gave Li Hongyuan considerable power, which would never happen under normal circumstances. Some ministers wanted to persuade him, but they were scolded by Luchingdi as soon as they opened their mouths. In particular, the ministers seemed to be related to the Su family, which aroused Luchingdi's resentment against imperial noble consort Su. Therefore, Luchingdi directly took his anger out on him, stripped him of his official uniform, and threw him out of the imperial palace. Seeing this, the others thought that they had touched Luchingdi's bottom line, so they kept quiet out of fear and didn't dare to say a word about it. After learning this, Li Hongyuan smiled. His smile was a little sarcastic and a little gloomy. Since such an opportunity was given to him, he would naturally make use of it openly and take the opportunity to consolidate the forces under his command. Because no one believed that Li Hongyuan could do anything in a short period of time, no one would suspect anything even if Li Hongyuan met someone or gave orders as a matter of course. As insiders, they inexplicably felt a sense of superiority as if prophet. They only hoped that when some people found out later, they wouldn't feel that they had been fooled too badly when they thought back to today. However, those who would think this way were those who were still alive. Because they could mobilize a large number of people openly, many things would go smoothly. There wouldn't be a shortage of people to sabotage things. The 81 altars required 81 eminent monks to preside over. The one near the capital was personally presided over by Master Liaochen. No one could doubt Master Liaochen's prestige. Therefore, regardless of whether they were sincerely praying for the imperial noble consort, anyone who gathered near this altar would be influenced by him and become devout. Jingwan and Li Hongyuan had naturally gone there personally. Jingwan felt that it wasn't Master Liaochen's prestige that influenced people, but something about him that she couldn't quite put her finger on. Jingwan felt that it was a little evil. Oh, wrong, it was a Buddhist nature. Just as Jingwan was doubting whether it had any effect, Jingwan went to the palace to pay a visit to Qin Shufei. Just by looking at Qin Shufei, Jingwan knew that it had worked. Perhaps it was because the two souls were in one, but the imperial noble consort spirit had improved and Qin Shufei was greatly affected. First of all, the effects of Wanshou's poisoning last year had disappeared. She looked radiant and energetic. If it had been someone more lively, the changes would have been more obvious. Jingwan vaguely mentioned that she knew about the imperial noble consort's existence. Therefore, she clearly knew from Qin Shufei that the imperial noble consort was getting better. As long as it was useful, it couldn't be better. Jingwan had a good impression of the real mother-in-law whom she hadn't met before. Because Jingwan came to the palace under the slogan of paying respects to the concubines, the empress and imperial noble consort Su didn't need to meet, but Imperial Noble Consort Wei still had to meet. However, they used to be rivals in love. Even if Imperial Noble Consort Wei's wishful thinking and posed no threat to Jingwan still had enough respect for her. Besides, she was pregnant now. When Jingwan saw Imperial Noble Consort Wei, she calculated the time. It seemed that it was almost time for her to give birth. Moreover, she had obtained it by using extreme means. Therefore, it was very likely that she would give birth prematurely. Therefore, she could give birth at any time now. Jingwan snorted in her heart. It seemed that it wasn't the right time. Imperial Noble Consort Wei's pregnancy was not very good. She suffered more. Pregnant women generally gained weight. But she didn't gain weight. Instead, she looked a lot thinner. In this way, her belly looked a little scary. Imperial Noble Consort Wei had closed the palace door long ago. But when she saw Jingwan, she was stimulated at once when she saw Jingwan's radiant face. What would happen if a pregnant woman who was about to give birth was stimulated? She would hold her belly and cry out in pain. Jingwan rolled her eyes. Yi Palace was in a state of chaos even though they were well prepared. After all, it was a real old child. Luqingdi was still very concerned and rushed over. Why did it suddenly happen? Your Majesty, because Imperial Noble Consort Jingwan looked at the hesitant look and sneered in her heart. Was she really a soft persimmon that could be pinched at will? Father, I guess concubine Xian must have thought of Prince Yu the moment she saw me, said Lin Mingya. https://11/11/11807/127790008 HTML M Chapter 499. Luqingdi's face suddenly turned black, and the palace servant who wanted to frame Jingwan just now felt his legs go soft. Thinking back, when Princess Yi Ning was still Wei Xianfei, she clearly took a fancy to Jin Qin Wang. As a result, she was accidentally slept with by Luqingdi. Because Li Hongyuan didn't care at all, he didn't put Princess Yi Ning in his eyes from the beginning. Luqingdi didn't have any grudges against his son, but it might not be the same for Wei Xianfei. Although he didn't say it, any man who knew that his woman's heart was filled with another man would definitely not be happy. Whether it was because of his anger or because Jingwan had exposed the truth, Luqingdi looked at her with a cold gaze. Jingwan didn't care, her expression was natural, not affected by Luqingdi. She just stepped into the door, and Xianfei Nyang had a problem. How could she be blamed? Even if Jingwan didn't say it, Wei Xianfei didn't see others prejudiced against Jingwan. Who knew what kind of rumors there would be at that time? Luqingdi's head hurt again. Lao Six's wife is considerate. Now Yi Palace is in a mess, you go back first. Taking care of Yuan is the most important thing. Yes, Erxi knows. Fu Wang, rest assured, Wang Ye is not bad now. Jingwan said meaningfully. Luqingdi's heart moved. The last time he entered the palace, he had a bit of an argument with Gui Fei. When he went back that day, what was his situation? Jingwan frowned. There was no special behavior, just that his mood wasn't right. Erxi asked, but he didn't say. He drank a lot of wine alone and then fell into a deep sleep. When he woke up, he didn't drink anymore, but he was still depressed. Until the Imperial Gui Fei's ritual began, he gradually recovered. Nothing could be seen on his face, but Erxi always felt that Wang Ye seemed to be looking for trouble, trying to make himself busy. You know, he's used to being idle, so doing this, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Luqingdi's brows also twisted. Persuade him, when it's time to rest, let him have a good rest. This is Erxi's duty. We know that you are a good person. We don't ask for anything else now. We only ask that you all be well. Rest assured, Imperial Father. Jingwan agreed verbally, but in her heart, she was cursing. They are indeed fine now, but I am afraid that you will be in trouble in the end. All right, you can go back. Yes, daughter-in-law will take her leave. Jingwan crouched down and left. Luchengdi's relaxed face turned gloomy in an instant. He looked coldly at the palace servant who tried to push the blame to Jingwan, drag him out and beat him to death. Your Majesty, please spare my life, Imperial concubine Xian. Before he could finish his sentence, his mouth was already blocked. No matter what his original intention was, at this moment, he had said something that he shouldn't have said, so he had to take the initiative to pay a heavy price. Even if Imperial concubine Xian was pregnant with the dragon seed, and even if she gave birth to a prince, it was impossible for her to ascend the throne. Therefore, her status would not rise because of this. It was hard to say what would happen to Imperial concubine Xian in the future. To some extent, it seemed that it depended on Luchengdi's mood. The former Wei was in internal strife now, and the princes were fighting to the death for the throne. It was much more serious than the Qi Yuan now. As the emperor of the former Wei, he was about to lose control of the situation, and the surrounding countries more or less knew about the situation. Therefore, no one had the time to care about Imperial concubine Xian now. Even if she died at this time, she would probably die. Speaking of which, when the Qi Yuan was glad that the former Wei would not take advantage of this opportunity to send troops, the former Wei was also glad that the Qi Yuan was hindered by the Xiongnu. Jingwan leisurely left the palace. She didn't care about the gazes of the people around her. As for those people's imaginations, alas, imaginations had always been a bottomless pit. It was also very colorful. Some might make people vomit blood in anger, and some might make people laugh until they were out of breath. Jingwan returned to Jin Wangfu. Since she didn't know that a certain person would take the initiative to ask, she told Li Hongyuan about the situation that she learned from Imperial concubine Qin. Li Hongyuan just casually responded twice and didn't have any other reaction, as if it had nothing to do with him. Jingwan expressed a little dissatisfaction and reached out to pull his face. That's your birth mother. She used herself as the price for you to come back. Is it really good for you to be like this? Then, Wan, what do you want this husband to do? Li Hongyuan held Jingwan's hand. Wan, between me and her, we haven't interacted for even a day. It can be said that I have no feelings for her. You have to know, it's because I knew that she was the one who let me come back that I was able to redeem my regrets. Otherwise, even if I knew that she was still alive, I wouldn't have done anything. All my feelings have been used up on you, and I don't have any more to give to others. I think that I have already done what I can do. As for the consequences, it's completely not within my scope of consideration. From time to time, she would be covered in sweet words. Other than hugging him tightly, Jingwan really didn't know what to say. There was no need to say anything else. In the future, no matter what it is, I will bear it with you. Jingwan felt that with such a man who treated her wholeheartedly, she would do anything for him. Now, she might feel some negative emotions because of the deaths of some innocent people, but if there was a day when she needed to kill for him, then Jingwan felt that she would probably do it without hesitation. Of course. Li Hongyuan hugged Jingwan, his mind still going online from time to time. There was no other way, he just wanted Wan to be closer to him. However, things still went wrong, and it wasn't as smooth as expected. So far, only a small part of the 81 days of ritual had been completed. In the beginning, Li Hongyuan and the others didn't know, but after receiving a hint from Master Qin, Jingwan once again rushed into the palace in a hurry. When she saw Qin Shufei, she knew that things were indeed a little troublesome. Qin Shufei was originally a peaceful, quiet, and beautiful woman, but now she gave people an illusion of evil. Of course, this feeling could not be felt by those who were around her every day. But for those who did not see her often, it would be more obvious if they compared her with her current self. Your Highness, how long has this situation been going on? Why didn't you send someone to tell us? Qin Shufei seemed to be affected on the surface, but after all, the ritual targeted the imperial noble consort's soul, so it didn't affect Qin Shufei's mind much. It's not that I don't want to tell you, it's... Qin Shufei was a little helpless. The situation isn't good now, and it seems very uncomfortable. Originally, I was like a cloud of white fog, but now my 4 limbs have been dyed black. I'm not sure what will happen if all of them are dyed black. Will they disappear, or will my current appearance be infinitely enlarged? No matter which one it is, it's very difficult to accept. However, I can more or less guess what she's thinking. She probably won't let the second situation happen. Jingwan understood. The imperial noble consort was willing to sacrifice her soul for her son's sake, so how could she allow unknown dangers to happen? Your Highness, we'll find the reason and think of a way. You, don't do anything foolish. Qin Shufei nodded. Don't worry, there won't be any problems in the short term. There were 2 reasons for this situation. First, the person praying for blessings had evil intentions. Second, there was a problem with the senior monk presiding over the ritual. Although the other party's cultivation was far inferior to Master Chen's, Master Chen wasn't the only expert in this world. Reverend, do you know where the problem is? Li Hongyuan's face was still expressionless, but that didn't mean that he would easily let off someone who liked to play tricks behind his back. It would be best if he didn't find out who it was. If he did, I can roughly deduce 2 locations, the south and the northwest. Li Hongyuan's heart skipped a beat. The northwest can be explained as a result of the war, but the south. Thinking of a certain possibility, Li Hongyuan felt that he should help their plan as soon as possible. He wanted to see if these people could really stir up a storm with such a big helper right under his nose. Is there any way to resolve the imperial noble consort's current situation? Although there are no records of this, it's obvious that it's not a good thing. Your Highness, don't worry. This humble monk will do his best. However, I can only prevent the situation from worsening. If you want to resolve it completely, you'll need to remove the source. This prince understands. Li Hongyuan left. The next day, to everyone's surprise, he attended the morning court. Although he was still late, it was basically after everything had been settled. Li Hongyuan was also quite straightforward. Imperial Father, this son requests to be stationed in the Northwest Army as an army supervisor. This really can be described as a stone that raises 1,000 ripples. Many people's ears were buzzing. Luqingdi was also stunned for a while, even doubting if he heard wrong. But when he saw the rare seriousness on Li Hongyuan's face, Luqingdi frowned. His eyes gradually sharpened. Do you know what you're saying? This son is very clear. Li Hongyuan raised his head and looked directly at Luqingdi. The imperial noble consort's ritual has gone awry. Because of the war in the northwest, there are too many vengeful spirits and grievances. Although these things will completely disappear after a long time, it just so happens to clash with the imperial noble consort's ritual. According to Master Liaochen, this son and the imperial noble consort are blood-related. To a certain extent, our destinies are intertwined. If the grievances of the northwest are transferred to this son, then the imperial noble consort's influence can be neutralized. Although the imperial noble consort didn't raise this son, she was still pregnant for several months. This is probably the only thing I can do for her in this lifetime. Imperial Father, please grant me this wish. Li Hongyuan's emotions didn't fluctuate, but Luqingdi was moved. It's my fault, it's all my fault. If he could be more rational and not be instigated by others, then his beloved would be fine. Then their family of 3, thinking and thinking, Luqingdi covered his face with his hands. In the court, in front of the civil and military officials, he seemed to be unable to control himself and began to cry. Li Hongyuan watched and sneered in his heart. No matter why he lost control of his emotions, Li Hongyuan despised it. The courtiers looked at each other in dismay. Of course, not everyone was attracted by Luqing Emperor's loss of self-control. Instead, they were considering what kind of impact Jin Qinhuang's trip to the northwest would have. Furthermore, what Jin Qinhuang said, how much truth was there? Luqingdi finally controlled his emotions. Lao Lu, this is no small matter. Shen needs to consider it. Moreover, Shen needs to know whether the grievances will affect you if they are transferred to you. If it's disadvantageous to you, then Jin will have no face to see your imperial mother in the future. Do you still have the face to see her when you strangled her to death with your own hands? A person's death is like an extinguished lamp. But after death, they will stay in the world for a short time. When they dissipate, the grievances will naturally disappear. Therefore, Imperial Father can rest assured. Luqingdi nodded. Shen understands. The longer it drags on, the more disadvantageous it will be for the Imperial Gui Fei. Imperial Father, please make a decision as soon as possible. Aken will retire. When he came, his presence was strong. When he left, it was the same. However, he didn't even want to wait for the morning court to end. So, why bother coming to the morning court? Once it's over, wouldn't it be better if he directly went to see the emperor? Is he here to show off his uniqueness to everyone? What they can think of, Luqingdi can naturally think of as well. In his view, it's probably because his son didn't want to meet him in private. Compared to Li Hongyuan and the Imperial Gui Fei, who does Luqingdi care more about? Needless to say, it's definitely the latter. Moreover, Luqingdi wants to see the Imperial Gui Fei. Naturally, he doesn't want anything to happen to the Imperial Gui Fei. But considering his own plans for Fu Yunting, how can he let his son go to the northwest so easily? As for whether or not his son will go to the Northwest Army, Luqingdi thought about it before, but he didn't care. Because when a prince goes to the battlefield, even if it's to be an army supervisor, he can't go alone. The accompanying personnel can be arranged by him, just like last year when he went to Jiangnan. While Luqingdi was lost in his thoughts while looking at the portrait of the Imperial Gui Fei, Li Suyen came to see him. In fact, Luqingdi liked this son very much. Although nominally Luqingdi recognized him as his adopted son, Luqingdi would do his best to do whatever he asked him to do. Luqingdi did not ask for the reason and did not bargain. Luqingdi did not need to worry about him. Luqingdi was lost in thought. Li Suyen just stood there quietly, not saying a word. Suyen, tell me, should Zhen let Jin Qinhuang go to the northwest? This was the first time Luqingdi asked for Li Suyen's opinion instead of directly giving an order or giving a task. Li Suyen's expression didn't change. Emperor, forgive me for speaking bluntly. According to Emperor's plan for Fu Yunting, if Jin Qinhuang goes to the northwest, he can be used. Impudent. Luqingdi was furious. Using his son's safety to deal with Fu Yunting, it was simply, Emperor can send trustworthy people to protect Wang Ye. If it's done properly, there won't be any evidence left behind and Fu Shi can be eradicated. Luqingdi's anger subsided a little. He was considering the feasibility of this matter. Because his body was fine, he had enough time to do it. Emperor can even reveal a bit of the plan to Jin Qinhuang. With Wang Ye's cooperation, it will be twice the result with half the effort. Luqingdi looked at the portrait of the Imperial Gui Fei and fell into silence again. So, the northwest trip was what you were preparing to do before? Since it didn't go according to plan, you simply used the matter of the Imperial Gui Fei and openly brought it up yourself. Jingwan stood in front of Li Hongyuan and grabbed Li Hongyuan's arm. She seemed to be surprised and excited. Say, isn't your brain turning a little too fast? Everything that can be used by you has been used cleanly. You won't let go of even the slightest chance. Li Hongyuan nodded, indeed. Then, Wan, are you interested in going out of the capital with me to have fun again? As for what Jingwan said after that, Li Hongyuan took it all as a compliment. He naturally accepted his wife's compliments with a smile. Jingwan was not surprised by his words. After knowing everything, it would be strange if he left her alone in the capital. But, please, the Northwest is at war. Can you not say such a carefree word like fun? It'll make people angry. They'll think that you don't care about the war at all and that you don't care about the lives of many people. It will only enter your ears. Li Hongyuan pinched her earlobe. It's just that going to the Northwest will not be as carefree as going to Jiangnan. Not to mention other things, just the things that we will bring will only be simple and practical. Wan may have to suffer. What's there to feel wronged about? How could I feel wronged? Although I haven't suffered a single bit since I came to Qiyuan, it doesn't mean that I can't suffer. At most, I won't be so extravagant. There won't be any suffering. You won't allow it. Jingwan rubbed his chin. Even if it's a war, Wan is quite happy. Yes. Jingwan nodded. Although war itself is not something to be happy about, it is indeed very happy to be able to go to the Northwest and really experience it. Of course, it would be better if there was no war. If there is no war, there will be no excuse to go. In my heart, I still want Wan to go and experience it. Jingwan's expression changed slightly. Let you relive your memories and let me have some memories of knowing each other. Yes, but also no. It's not reliving, but rewriting. Alright, let the current me rewrite it. At the very least, I have to cover up the things that cause you pain. As for the things that you think are beautiful, I will be generous and not bother about them. What was there to be jealous of? It was really quite meaningless to talk about it. As long as you don't want to leave me, then it's okay to be calculative. It's because Wan has me in her heart that she will be calculative, right? Li Hongyuan's voice was laced with a hint of laughter. Jingwan looked up at him and pulled his face again. You look quite happy, right? As you can see. Never be calculative with a thick-skinned person, otherwise, you will only be angered to death. But is there a special reason why Yuan insists on going to the Northwest? Is it just to take the opportunity to take me out and have a look? That's one of the reasons. The second reason is that I want to personally kill the Xiongnu virtuous king. Is there a grudge? A big grudge. In my previous life, although more than 200,000 soldiers died innocently, it was the work of the man on the throne. It was also because of the Xiongnu virtuous king. Later on, when I ascended the throne, I fought against him and suffered losses at his hands. Naturally, I want to take the opportunity to get revenge. In this life, if he sat on the throne again, Li Hongyuan did not intend to personally lead the army into battle. Therefore, the virtuous king who personally killed the Xiongnu virtuous king only had this one chance. Jingwan understood. Although the virtuous king of the West Xiongnu virtuous king was quite innocent and had not done anything, as long as his existence was a danger, then he must be eliminated. As for his innocence, that was only because Prince Jin of the Qi Yuan took the initiative. Although this matter had not been decided yet, in Jingwan's view, the possibility of Emperor Luqingdi not agreeing was very low. Therefore, she began to prepare in advance. She had read a lot of travel books about the Northwest, so she knew about the local customs and the current climate. It did not matter if she did not know about it. Anyway, Prince Jin's residence did not lack relevant professionals. Unlike the trip to Jiangnan, all the luxurious and exquisite things were abandoned. Even the clothes had to be simple so that it was convenient to move around. Moreover, on the battlefield, perhaps she could bring some medicine, especially medicine for wounds. In the end, the number of people who followed her would not be as many as in Jiangnan. Now, the only maids serving her were probably Sister He and Nanny Gong. After calculating, it was enough. After all, even a 9th-grade handicapped person could become an elite with some pressure. As they did not know about the trip, the servants were a little confused when they heard Jingwan's orders. However, they only needed to obey their master's orders. Sure enough, within 2 days, Emperor Luqingdi's decree came down. The personnel assigned to Li Hongyuan were not as luxurious as when they went to Jiangnan. They were more simple, and the military strength was higher. Jingwan did not hide the things she ordered. Some things still needed to be purchased. Basically, some things could be seen from it. Obviously, this time was different from the last trip to Jiangnan. They did not intend to follow quietly at all and only let people know at the end. It could be said that they made a big fuss. Was Prince Jean going to take Prince Consort Jean? Many people found it inconceivable. Last year in Jiangnan, the northwest was full of war. Taking women there. What kind of joke was this? Luqingdi soon knew about it, but he didn't say anything. Moreover, even if he tried to stop it, it would be useless. Since his son had already let others know about it, his attitude was already very clear. The father and son wanted to at least maintain their relationship on the surface. If he tried to stop it, he didn't know if his son would directly go against him. Moreover, in Emperor Luqingdi's view, his son always needed someone to take care of him. If it was other women, they might be labeled as indulging in sensual pleasures. It did not matter if it was other places, but it was absolutely not a place of war. With his Wang Fei, the mood was different. It was just that Emperor Luqingdi did not react, but Luo family's reaction was a bit big. They naturally approved of a place like Jiangnan, but what was the situation in the northwest now? Was it a place where a woman could easily set foot? Even Prince Jean could really go to the battlefield, let alone Prince Consort Jean. However, when the two countries were at war, both sides would eliminate a lot of spies, and there might be spies that had already been arranged. If she, a prince consort, appeared, wouldn't it be a living target for these people? So they did not agree, they firmly did not agree. Old Madame Luo and Zhangshi could not sit still and directly went to Prince Jin Fu to see Jingwan. Zhangshi was a typical person made of water. Although she had not been sad for a long time, but at this moment, her eyes were like a flood breaking through a dam. Usually, old Madame Luo hated Zhangshi the most, but this time, she felt that her tears were not useless. Therefore, when Jingwan had a headache and comforted Zhangshi, she sat on the side. Zhangshi could not be comforted, and Jingwan was too lazy to say anything in the end. She directly looked at old Madame Luo, "Grandmother, this time, no matter what, I will go. So, I ask grandmother to help me this time. Forgive granddaughter for being unfilial." Old Madame Luo frowned. Jingwan was raised by her, and old Madame Luo was very clear about Jingwan's temperament. Some things had already been decided, and then even 9 bulls could not pull her back. "Wan, have you really decided?" "Yes, grandmother." "In that case, I will not persuade you, and I will not ask why you insist on going. But you must send letters back often to let us know that you are safe." In the end, Madame Luo was a reasonable person. She knew that she couldn't persuade her, so she didn't say any harsh words. Some words, although in essence, were good in order to keep people, once spoken, it would also be very hurtful. "Yes, grandmother, I will." Jingwan chuckled. "Mother." Zhangshi was stunned. This was different from what they had agreed. Didn't they say that they would make Wan stay no matter what? "Okay, don't cry. Don't you think it's bad luck to cry all day long?" Old Madame Luo said in a bad mood. Zhangshi choked. Don't think that I didn't see it before. Old Madame Luo clearly approved of her crying. How long had it been, and now she changed her mind. Zhangshi felt very wronged, but since old Madame Luo did not allow her to cry, Zhangshi did not dare to cry anymore. However, she cried for too long and too fiercely. For a while, she could not stop sobbing. She felt very uncomfortable, and so did others. Jingwan called the servant girls to take Zhangshi down to wash her face and apply it to her eyes. Otherwise, her eyes would be very uncomfortable if this continued for a long time. Old Madame Luo did not persuade her anymore. Old Madame Luo carefully observed some things with her. Although Jingwan knew a lot of it, she knew that this was her grandmother's love and care. She listened carefully and expressed that she would pay attention at all times. Later, Li Hongyuan also came. Obviously, old Madame Luo would not give him face at this time. He knew that if it was not his intention, his granddaughter would not go. Therefore, the source was still Jin Qin Wang. However, because of her identity and also taking Jingwan into consideration, old Madame Luo's attitude was a little cold, but her words were not bad at all. Li Hongyuan knew very well what kind of treatment he would receive if he came. However, he guessed that old Madame Luo would have something to say to him in the end. At the same time, because he knew that the other party was completely for Jingwan, it did not matter if he received a cold face. Whatever old Madame Luo said, he would obediently listen and be an ordinary grandson-in-law. Although old Madame Luo was still worried about Jingwan's future, for now, she was very satisfied with Li Hongyuan, this grandson-in-law. Although she did not have as deep a relationship with her other granddaughters as Jingwan, it was not that she did not care. Thinking about it, all the other grandson-in-laws added together could not compare to this one. It was the same in all aspects. In fact, when it came to the status of son-in-law and grandson-in-law, other than the benefits, the status of the Yu family was inversely proportional to everything else. The higher the status, the more unsatisfactory it was. After all, because of their high status, there were many things that they did not have to worry about and may not treat their own daughter well. If their status was low, there would always be some fear when doing certain things. However, Li Hongyuan was good to Jingwan. As a member of the Luo family, sometimes they felt a little embarrassed. After sending off old Madame Luo, because Li Hongyuan's attitude was unusually good, Jingwan was very intimate with him for a while. Therefore, who said that Jin Qin Wang would definitely be wronged, perhaps they were scheming again. Li Hongyuan used the excuse that the imperial Gue phase matter could not be delayed and left in a hurry. Lu Qingdi naturally did not have any objections, but there were some things that he wanted to instruct him. However, Li Hongyuan was not summoned and this kind of thing could not be spoken to by a third party, let alone leave something like a secret edict. Therefore, he could only entrust this matter to Li Suyan. Ever since the horse farm was built, Jingwan would ride the horse from time to time. Perhaps it was because Li Hongyuan already had a plan and did not limit it to Jingwan running on flat roads. Jingwan's current equestrian skills were not very good, but as long as she did not let loose and the road was not that rugged, Jingwan's speed could basically keep up. It was not certain if she would still get carsick from sitting in a carriage, but most of the time, Jingwan would follow the horse. Although riding for a long time might cause some suffering, she had already prepared for this. The medicine had already been prepared. When she rested at night, she would apply the medicine and continue the next day. When she really could not bear it anymore, she would take the carriage to prevent her body from having problems and slowing down the journey. Li Hongyuan had never stopped letting the Ministry of Works remodel the carriage. So far, it had been quite effective. In addition to the meticulous arrangement, although the carriage was not as spacious and exquisite as Li Hongyuan's carriage that symbolized his identity, the comfort was not much worse. Now that she was not as carsick as before, it was not unbearable. With regards to Jingwan's degree of delicateness, the people of Jin Qin Wang Fu had all seen it. They were actually a little worried about this trip, but the facts showed that she had once again exceeded their expectations. Especially Gongzhou, he could not help but think of the scene at Bailong Temple where he saw her taking care of Li Hongyuan. At that time, he felt that she did not seem like a noble lady from a noble family. Now, she also did not seem like a Wang Fei that was piled up with gold and jade by master. At one time, they were dissatisfied with Jingwan. Although it was only in their hearts, because master could not do without her, they only hoped that she would not be a burden. However, the facts proved that this Wang Fei was always able to go beyond their expectations. In their eyes, there was no one more suitable than her to be Jin Qin Wang's existence. Not only would she not be a burden, when needed, she could also completely stand up, support the situation, and help master. Not to mention the others, especially those who had followed them to Jiangnan, the delicate appearance of Jin Qin Wang's Wang Fei could be said to be fresh in their minds. So when they saw Jingwan most of the time, she was capable and experienced, riding with them and did not need to slow down in order to take care of her, they all doubted whether this person was really Jin Qin Wang's Wang Fei. Could it be that one really could not judge a book by its cover? Not only that, this Wang Fei was amazing, the people who served her were also not the least bit lacking. Not to mention that servant girl who seemed to be trained, that mama who looked to be in her 40s or 50s, her horse riding skills seemed to be above most of them all, making them, this group of big men, feel ashamed and unable to show their faces awe. Along the way, when they stopped to rest, Jingwan also consciously began to practice the hand crossbow. In addition, Li Hongyuan also equipped her with the sleeve arrows that were usually used by secret guards. Although he was confident that he could protect Jingwan's safety, there was never a lack of contingencies in the world. Therefore, it was not a bad thing for Jingwan to have some self-defense skills. They arrived 2 days earlier than expected. Although they were at Luqingdi's place for the imperial noble consort's matter, it was not easy to announce it. At least, it could not be known to the people in the northwest. Moreover, Li Hongyuan had the title of inspecting the army, so naturally, he was the first to arrive at the front line. Jingwan was arranged to stay in the city first. Because they had been informed in advance, they had already made arrangements. However, because there was a battle ahead, they did not see Fu Yunting and the others. Jingwan did not care. She could not set foot in the camp where the army was stationed, so she safely settled down in the courtyard in the city. She would rest for a while before making plans. Most of the people were left behind. Li Hongyuan only brought a few people and went directly to the army camp to see Fu Yunting. Because the imperial court had sent a prince to supervise the army, and he was the one with the worst reputation, there were many generals. Those who had followed Fu Yunting were only a minority. These people knew Li Hongyuan very well, and the others had also heard of him. Therefore, they were very nervous. These people were not afraid of war, they were only afraid of being cheated. However, when they really saw Li Hongyuan, those who knew him were still fine. Those who did not know him were completely stunned by Li Hongyuan's appearance and temperament. Sinister and ruthless, temperamental, drinking human blood, eating human flesh. This kind of person, even if he did not have 3 heads and 6 arms, he should have a sinister face, like a yiksha. In the end, he was incomparably handsome, noble and graceful. If one were to say that he was a god from the 9th heaven, there would be people who would believe it. However, this kind of shock could not be maintained for more than a few breaths. Li Hongyuan flung the horsewhip in his hand. His eyes were sharp and cold, clearly telling these people that Jin Qin Wang was not as terrifying as they imagined, but he was definitely not as harmless as the first impression. Fu Yunting, lead the way to the main tent. Was he looking for trouble the moment he arrived? The people behind Fu Yunting looked at each other in dismay, but did not dare to say anything. Asking Wang Ye to follow this humble one. Fu Yunting's expression did not change as he led the way in front. Yu Zhongqing, Li Suyan and Imperial bodyguard Qian followed, the others were on standby. Opening the tent door, Li Hongyuan directly sat on the main seat. What is the situation now? Fu Yunting discreetly glanced at Li Suyan and Yu Zhongqing. Some thoughts flashed through his mind, then he started to explain on the sand table. Li Hongyuan listened silently from beginning to end, until Fu Yunting finished. Only then did he ask a few questions. It could be said that every word was a gem, every sentence hit the nail on the head. From the beginning of the war until now, Li Hongyuan had given Fu Yunting pointers several times through letters. Therefore, Fu Yunting knew that Li Hongyuan also had considerable attainments in military strategy. It was just that, when they were face to face, that kind of pressure suddenly increased by countless levels. That feeling was like a small soldier facing a decisive war god who had led the army for decades. There was even sweat on his forehead. Fu Yunting's heart was filled with fear and admiration. On the surface, he appeared to be careful, but he realized that there were many areas where he did not think things through thoroughly. He felt ashamed and focused 120%, memorizing them one by one. Speaking of which, actually, Li Hongyuan's narrow-mindedness acted up again. It was just that it was not good to deal with Fu Yunting openly, so naturally, he started from other aspects, to absolutely suppress Fu Yunting. Although under his suppression, Fu Yunting might become stronger and stronger, but that was not what Li Hongyuan wanted. After all, in the future, Fu Yunting would have to work hard for him. If Fu Yunting was not strong enough, how could he fight for his country? The few of them stayed in the tent for a long time, and the people outside were waiting impatiently. Speaking of which, Fu Yunting could be said to have the support of the masses. His prestige was very high, and the generals were very convinced. With such a person like him, the generals naturally did not want him to be suppressed or even humiliated because of his status. But after all, the other party was a prince, and came under the emperor's orders. They could not do anything, and if they did, it might even bring trouble to him. It could be said that when they were anxiously waiting, he finally came out. Everyone hurriedly saluted. "Greetings, Your Highness." Li Hongyuan was expressionless, but he was well aware of it. Therefore, it was reasonable. A general who was respected and loved by the soldiers was a qualified general. Only this way could he lead the soldiers to more victories. Li Hongyuan prepared to leave the military camp, but someone stood up. "This general is unruly. Please show Your Highness the Imperial Edict." https://11/11807/12809546. Chapter 500. Li Hongyuan's cold eyes swept over, making people feel chills all over their bodies. Fu Yunting saw that something was wrong and subconsciously stood in front of that general. After he finished, he realized that his reaction was too big, but he could only brace himself. "Wang Ye, please forgive me." Li Hongyuan was expressionless. General Fu is very protective of his subordinates, but Ben Wang is not a scourge or ferocious beast. Could it be that Ben Wang will eat him? Fu Yunting's scalp went numb. The main reason was that the psychological shadow that Jin Qinhuang gave him was too big. It simply became an instinctive reaction. "Wang Ye, please forgive me." Li Hongyuan coldly snorted. "As the commander-in-chief of an army, you are really promising." Fu Yunting's face was slightly hot. Fortunately, it was a few months of eating and sleeping in the open. His skin was already tanned and rough, so it was not very visible. Otherwise, the dignity that he had built up over the past few months would have collapsed at this moment. There was no other way. Facing anyone, he would not be like this. Right now, he was just stubbornly holding on. "Okay." Li Hongyuan tapped the horsewhip in his hand with his other hand and looked at Fu Yunting meaningfully before leaving. Fu Yunting only felt his scalp go numb. Even a scourge or ferocious beast was not this terrifying awe. If he could, he really did not want to face Jin Qin Wang. Even if he used other methods to torment him, it was still better than this kind of face-to-face. Imperial Guard Qian stepped forward and took out the imperial edict that he carried with him, directly handing it over. Letting people kneel to receive the imperial edict and whatnot, forget it. General does not need to be so nervous. It is just official business. Wang Ye will not be angry and naturally will not do anything. But even if Wang Ye forgot about this matter, it should be General's matter. If your subordinates speak up, it will inevitably be suspected of overstepping your authority. Wang Ye is a person who follows the rules. This will also make Wang Ye question General's ability to manage the army. The living king of hell was someone who followed the rules. These words were probably only spoken by the people around him. Many thanks for the reminder. As long as it was not Li Hongyuan, Fu Yunting regained his calm. Imperial bodyguard Qian nodded, cupped his hands, and left. It was only after Li Hongyuan and his entourage had all left that the people present wiped the non-existent sweat from their foreheads and breathed a sigh of relief. Jin Qin Wang's imposing manner was truly terrifying. General, did Jin Wang Ye say anything? Under normal circumstances, people like the army supervisor were not very well liked. Under normal circumstances, if the imperial court had enough trust, why would they send an army supervisor? Moreover, there were some supervisors who came down to snatch the credit. Just this alone, for the sake of the overall situation, it wasn't that they couldn't tolerate it. However, they were afraid that these people would recklessly interfere with the military affairs. They clearly didn't understand and yet they still blindly gave orders. This would lead to immeasurable tragic consequences. Knowing that there would be no problem with the imperial edict, Fu Yunting still looked at it symbolically. I know what you are worried about. Don't worry, what you are thinking will not happen. If that's the case, you're naturally the best. But what's the purpose of this bodhisattva? In fact, Fu Yunting also wanted to know why Li Hongyuan was here. Was it because he wasn't at ease with this war, so he came to personally take a look? However, no matter what, according to Jin Qin Wang's ability, the advantages of the war far outweighed the disadvantages. The so-called disadvantages, Fu Yunting was a little embarrassed and felt that it was probably concentrated on him. Therefore, no matter what, this mentality must be adjusted well and absolutely couldn't be removed because of his own reasons. General, then do you want to hold a welcoming banquet for Wang Ye? Another old general asked. There's no need for a welcoming banquet. Not to mention the tension of the war, it's Wang Ye's first time here. I'm afraid many things are not to his taste. Fu Yunting said it tactfully. Those who didn't know deeply agreed, and those who knew rubbed their nose and didn't say anything. With Jin Qin Wang's degree of extravagance and pickiness, they really couldn't afford it here. They didn't want to spend so much effort to hold a banquet, but in the end, they left on bad terms. When Li Hongyuan returned to the city, Jingwan had already woken up from her nap. Her spirit had more or less recovered. For the time being, the city hadn't been affected by the war. But after all, it was the northwest border. Naturally, it couldn't be compared to the capital and Jiangnan's prosperity, but it still had its own local characteristics. The buildings were relatively cold and hard, and the color scheme leaned towards the cold. However, because it was prepared for the Qin Wang to live in, it was still well prepared. The people in the residence might not be very polite, but they abided by the rules and had a sense of propriety. Jingwan wasn't unaccustomed to it. As for Li Hongyuan, in fact, he wasn't extravagant on normal days. When it was necessary, he could adapt to any environment. It was just that after seeing the layout of the residence, he was still very dissatisfied. He doubted that bringing his wife to the northwest, was it wrong? Or should he have brought more things like when he went to Jiangnan? But this was just a thought. If he really did it, Wan would be hated by who knows how many people. But when he saw that Jingwan was adapting well, Li Hongyuan's brows slightly relaxed. Jingwan chuckled and stretched out her finger to rub Li Hongyuan's eyebrows. I'm fine. Li Hongyuan also laughed. Yes, how could he forget that his wife wouldn't be easily bought over by external things? The reason why she calmly accepted everything he gave was because she first accepted him from the bottom of her heart. The only thing that could buy her was never external things, but sincerity. You went to the barracks to take a look. How is the situation? It's just a so-so. It didn't meet expectations, but it didn't disappoint too much. Fu Yunting is still lacking after all. I just need to train him again. His tone was faint, but his eyes were looking at her. Jingwan almost laughed, but in the end, she held back. If she laughed, she didn't know what this man would do. However, she and Fu Yunting didn't even have a face-to-face photo. Did he have to be like this? Jingwan really wanted to say, you're just looking for trouble if you keep bringing up your past life. Alright, she couldn't say that. Yes, it's his honor to be trained by Yuan personally. Li Hongyuan's eyes were cold. He reached out and pinched Jingwan's face. Don't think that I don't know what you're thinking. But I'm too lazy to argue with you now. Just wait, I'll record it down one by one. We'll slowly settle it when we return to the capital. Jingwan rolled her eyes at him. This narrow-minded man. Li Hongyuan took Jingwan to walk around the garden. There wasn't much to admire, so the topic naturally turned to the situation in the northwest. Jingwan asked the question in her heart. Yuan, in your previous life, the Qi Yuan suffered heavy losses. According to the fierceness of the Xiongnu, they should have directly attacked the Qi Yuan. However, from what I've heard, the Qi Yuan is in trouble and the Xiongnu have directly withdrawn their troops. I told you the same thing. There's an internal problem in the western Xiongnu. The virtuous king's power is getting stronger and stronger, and some people have the idea of plucking the fruits of their labor. In addition, this winter, there's a rare heavy snow in the north. The area near the Qi Yuan is quite serious, not to mention the areas further north. The nomadic people's main property is cattle, sheep, and other livestock. A large number of people have died, so in order to survive, they naturally have to plunder. The former Wei and the Xiongnu are all disaster areas, so the Xiongnu don't have much energy to invest in the Qi Yuan. Moreover, the Xiongnu themselves are not a rich land. To be able to fight against the Qi Yuan for a year, their reserves are almost depleted. Even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice. Jingwan understood. In other words, the Xiongnu did not have the right time, place, and people. They had no choice but to retreat when they had such a great opportunity. She wondered if the virtuous king was so angry that he vomited blood. Therefore, although the Qi Yuan could be said to be besieged on all sides, it had a lot of luck. This had created favorable conditions for someone to establish a more powerful dynasty in the future. And now, he had the advantage of foresight in certain aspects. If there were no accidents, the Qi Yuan in his hands in the future would be more powerful and prosperous than the one in his previous life. Jingwan did not have much ambition, but when she thought about such a prosperous era, which was created by her husband, she could not help but feel excited and proud. If we eliminate the virtuous king now, won't it be easier to deal with the Xiongnu in the future? Of course, but there are many things that cannot be generalized. After all, without the virtuous king, the internal conflicts among the Xiongnu would be reduced. If the Xiongnu retreated early to recuperate, then they would be able to preserve some of their accumulation. When they attack again in the future, they would be united as one. Hearing this, Jingwan was not nervous. She believed that he had a follow-up plan. So So, not only do we have to eliminate the virtuous king, we have to completely destroy the Xiongnu, just like the northern Xiongnu in the past. You have to know that the northern Xiongnu and the western Xiongnu were rivals in the past. Because of the battle with the Qi Yuan, the northern Xiongnu were far inferior to the western Xiongnu until today. Not to mention, during this period of time, the western Xiongnu had plundered a large amount of territory. Destroy them to the point that they will be exterminated? Jingwan finished his sentence. Li Hongyuan turned to look at Jingwan and smiled. Wan, you are quite ambitious. Jingwan turned to look at him. What was he talking about? It was obviously this bastard who had led her to say this. Li Hongyuan held her hand, their fingers intertwined, and continued walking at a moderate pace. If the Xiongnu are completely defeated, the one on the throne will not have the chance to find trouble with Fu Yunting openly. Even if the emperor has great achievements, he will not dare to act recklessly against such a meritorious official. If that's the case, according to the Su family's plan, the emperor will be even more restless. Others will not do anything to him, but he will be worried to death. What does that have to do with us? Li Hongyuan was unusually calm. To be honest, the more worried Lu Qingdi was, the happier he would be. Therefore, Lu Qingdi was a failure as a husband, a failure as a father, and an even greater failure as an emperor. We can only take this matter slowly. But how should we deal with the imperial noble consort? Is it really because of the war? Whether it is or not, we will know when we go to the spell altar tomorrow. How far is the nearest spell altar? It is less than 100 miles away from this city. It is the only spell altar in the 5 counties inside and outside Heaven's Gate. There are 80 places with good feng shui. Is the northwest such a small proportion of the land? It is not strange. Throughout history, after many dynasties, how many have built a capital city in this area? Well, in the past history of Qi Yuan, there was no such thing. Moreover, a capital city was very important to a country. If it was to be built, it really needed to be considered in all aspects. Shall I ask someone to prepare it? No, I will go there. Anyway, it is a secret. If you are here, won't you be able to cover for me better? Jingwan raised her eyebrows. She suspected that he was up to no good. Don't worry. I will go there early tomorrow morning. I will be back tomorrow. Jingwan really had nothing to worry about. Okay, you go. I will also take the opportunity to understand the situation in the city and see if there is anything I can help with. She could not only help. Li Hongyuan thought of his previous life. Because of his situation at that time, he did not know what Jingwan did. But later on, he learned that Fu Yunting could hold on for more than a year under the situation of internal and external troubles. How much credit did Jingwan have for Jingwan? It was the same her. Although she appeared here in a different way, he believed that what she would do in the future would be the same. Moreover, now that her status was different, her words would be carried out more vigorously in the beginning. In this way, the princess consort would definitely do better than the general's wife. However, in reality, would it really be like this? Jingwan had personally asked for the provisions and personally escorted them. She had already gained support with her own abilities. In addition, Fu Yunting had gained the respect of the soldiers and citizens of the Northwest. Whatever Jingwan wanted to do, many people would unconditionally believe her. How could her words not be carried out? On the contrary, the current princess consort, in these people's impression, was that she did not know pain and suffering. She only knew how to enjoy life and did not know anything. She was a noble lady who needed people to serve her. 9 out of 10 of her words would be doubted. So, the princess consort was the general's wife. Haha, let's not talk about the end. In the beginning, it was definitely impossible. How could Li Hongyuan not know this? Wrong, it was because he knew it very clearly. So he was being petty. Jing Wan didn't know what he was thinking. She was still telling him what she could do to help. The more Li Hongyuan listened, the darker his face became. According to Jing Wan's words, she would probably be busier than him. The time they spent together would be infinitely reduced. Your husband brought you here to play. Suddenly hearing Li Hongyuan's cold and harsh words, Jing Wan was stunned. Then she did not know whether to laugh or cry. Ah Yuan, don't make a fuss. What time is it now? Are you really bringing me here to play? Actually, you know best in your heart. So, at this point, don't make a fuss. Hearing Jing Wan's last adjective, Li Hongyuan's face became even darker. However, it was undeniable that Jing Wan was right. The living Hell King was in a bad mood and did not want to continue walking. He pulled his wife back to rest. After all, for a long time after this, he was afraid that he would not be able to eat his fill. Jing Wan was severely tormented, but the next day, she still woke up full of energy. However, Li Hongyuan had already left. Jing Wan's morning exercise was not cancelled. On the contrary, it was increased to a certain extent. Moreover, it was not only physical exercise, but also hand crossbows and arrows. Although she did not see the cruelty of the battlefield, and probably would not see it, but as it neared, she could not help but feel a sense of danger. When Jing Wan heard it, she was already sweating profusely. Even in the summer, Jing Wan rarely sweated so much. However, everyone saw Jing Wan's efforts. Granny Gong also consciously taught Jing Wan some boxing skills. Jing Wan herself might not know, but the secret guards hiding in the dark knew very well. Those were the killing moves that were more skillful. They did not require too much strength and were not harmful to the body. Most people might find it difficult to learn, but Jing Wan's body was very flexible and balanced because she had been training since she was a child. Therefore, it was very easy for her to learn. Those who knew Granny Gong's identity looked at each other. Was it really okay for the Lady Protector to do this? In fact, unless they were all dead, how could the princess consort fight with others personally? But would there be a day when they were all dead? What a joke. If someone could kill them all, with such a group of sneaky soldiers, not to mention that the capital would be pierced into a sieve, at least there would be an assassination case from time to time. It was not easy to kill them in the capital. There were many governors in all the counties. So, the Lady Protector was teaching the princess consort so that she could fight with the prince. Alright, she had accidentally exposed herself. She had better stop quickly. If she accidentally revealed her emotions, wouldn't she be courting death? Jing Wan washed up and had breakfast. Then, she put on a set of clean clothes and went out with her men. Speaking of which, although she did not wear a fancy dress or exquisite hair accessories tonight, the material of her clothes was very different from the clothes of the people in the northwest. Therefore, she attracted a lot of attention when she went out on the street. However, the customs here were quite good. Most people just took a look and then left. They did not cause unnecessary trouble. Besides, they could more or less guess that Jing Wan's identity was not simple. Although there were not many people around Jing Wan, there were still some unfamiliar figures around her. When the two countries were at war, as a border town, they were very sensitive to unfamiliar faces. Therefore, even though many people were wearing the local clothes and mingling with the crowd to protect Jing Wan, they did not achieve their real goal. This was probably something that Imperial bodyguard Qian and the others did not expect. However, they were different. After going through special training, they were able to see through other people's eyes. Therefore, after a while, they would definitely notice something. Therefore, this mistake would not last long. However, Jing Wan was upright and magnanimous. No matter what she did, if she had doubts, she would ask. If she did not understand, she would ask. If she inadvertently offended someone, she would apologize very straightforwardly. This kind of attitude would not cause others to be dissatisfied. Speaking of which, because the purpose of Jin Qinhuang's visit was unclear and they did not know where to start, many people were actually staring at Jingwan. Of course, this kind of thing could not be done by a man. Wouldn't that be offending Jin Qinhuang to death? Don't forget, this was originally a prefectural city. The number of officials here was not small. These officials all had family members. Because of the war, civil officials were also used as facial features. They did not have to go to the battlefield. Their feet did not touch the ground all day long. They even had frequent contact with soldiers. Their bodies were even infected with some of the habits of the military. Following that, the people and their families were also affected. What's more, in the Northwest, the customs were originally relatively open. Especially for women, the restrictions were much weaker. Compared to being a housewife, some of them were able to wield the whip with vigor. Perhaps because they knew the worries of the elders in their families, they were also worried about the soldiers. Therefore, some of the young ladies volunteered to go and check out the situation. Jingwan going out at this time was a good opportunity for them. It was just that they did not show up at the beginning and only watched from afar. Because the unfamiliar faces in the crowd were also centered around Jingwan, they did not call the city guards. However, this kind of situation actually had a certain drawback. Because, during this time, they could be used by others. The people in the city might not know how many people were around Jingwan, and the people around Jingwan were all strangers. Therefore, those who wanted to take advantage of the situation could take advantage of this loophole. Therefore, it was best for both sides to meet face to face and clearly identify each other. However, it was not suitable for some secret guards to show up in front of others. Nanny Gong whispered to Jingwan about this matter. Jingwan frowned slightly. In this case, it was best for her to go to a crowded place. Sometimes, a spy could be an unimaginable threat. Therefore, Jingwan was quite decisive about this matter. It did not matter if she did not show up. After all, she was not really here to have fun. However, she felt that she had to do something step by step. If she suddenly broke into a place where she should not break into, she would probably not be liked, be guarded against, and be regarded as enemies. More importantly, she would cause trouble for others. Therefore, it was quite troublesome to tell Jingwan where to go next. Since your highness wants to see the condition of those wounded soldiers, you can go directly to the person in charge. Jingwan thought for a while. This was indeed the best way. In fact, it was very necessary to have a good relationship with the person in charge if she wanted to intervene in a matter without causing any trouble. Because the people trained by Prince Jin were quite capable and had already sent people over, Jingwan actually remembered the layout of the entire prefectural city. She did not need anyone to lead the way at all and could find the way by herself. Probably because they saw that Jingwan was too purposeful, the people who were watching from afar could not sit still any longer and immediately caught up with her. Naturally, the existence of these people could not escape the eyes of Nanny Gong and the others. Therefore, Jingwan was not at all surprised that they were blocked. Instead, she smiled and said, "I thought you girls were not going to show up." The moment she spoke, the other party was a little embarrassed. "Your Highness, have you noticed us long ago? You girls are traveling together. In this city, it should be quite obvious. Coupled with the attitude of the people around you, you have been following me for a long time. If you still can't find out, not to mention other things, the guards who followed me will be punished when they return." In the end, they were still young girls. Even if they were affected by the war and by their families, perhaps they knew more things, but in the end, they had not experienced the wind, frost, snow, and rain. They were still innocent and naive. They thought that they hid it well and let them come out. Their families did not have any hope at all. Perhaps it was more to express a kind of attitude. It turned out that they had been discovered long ago. Then why were they still sneaking around? They should have come out earlier. Your Highness, where do you plan to go? We can lead the way. Don't you already know? Are you sure you want to lead the way for me? Jingwan asked with a faint smile. The place where the wounded soldiers were placed was obviously not a good place. There could be death at any time, and it was always filled with the smell of blood and medicine. It would definitely be very unpleasant when mixed together. Moreover, there were endless painful groans. In short, there was only grief and despair. Everyone would feel depressed. Good people would definitely be affected by negative emotions after entering. The families of these girls probably forbade them to set foot in such a place. In fact, they were indeed hesitating. It was not only because of the warning of their families, but also because they had secretly gone there. It was too uncomfortable to stay in that place. Not long after, they felt suffocated. So, to be honest, they really did not want to go. However, this Qin Wang Fei from the capital was much more delicate than them. Moreover, she probably wouldn't be able to stand that kind of place. Perhaps she would just stand at the border for a while before turning around and leaving. They might even be able to show off their superiority in front of this Qin Wang Fei. If your Highness wants to go, we can lead the way. But is your Highness sure you want to go? Were they being checkmated? Jingwan's core and shell did not match after all. She was quite tolerant of these girls. We'll go. Then, your Highness, please. Perhaps because of Jingwan's good attitude, they could not help but soften their attitude. Then, if your Highness feels uncomfortable, you can tell us directly. Don't force yourself. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Since this was the case, no one said anything more. Perhaps because the place they were going to was special, no one joked. The wounded soldiers were placed on the other side of the prefectural city. They had vacated an area. In essence, they were still choosing the location from the slums. This was also a subconscious choice made by those in power. If it was anyone else, there would be no exception. And the commoners who were let out would not feel that it was inappropriate. In this way, it was better to take a carriage to save time and energy. The closer they got, the fewer people they could see. And the atmosphere seemed to have already spread. It could be felt from afar. Jingwan asked someone to stop the carriage in advance. She got off the carriage and led the people, step by step, towards the place. This place must be guarded. Thus, before Jingwan and the others could get close, they were already blocked outside. In this place, they could already see some of the situation inside. Especially the smell, it was exceptionally unpleasant. Jingwan endured and did not use a handkerchief to cover her nose and mouth. Not to mention other things, just based on the smell, Jingwan could conclude that the hygiene inside must be terrible. Imperial Guard Qian stepped forward and took out the waist token of Jin Qin Wang Fu to show his identity. The guards looked at each other in dismay. It must be known that not everyone knew that there would be an army supervisor in the northwest, and that it was a prince. Thus, when they suddenly knew the identity of Jingwan and the others, they were extremely surprised. It must be known that the trip to Jiangnan last year was deliberately publicized by some people. Thus, when Li Hongyuan arrived at a certain place, there were many people who knew about it. However, the common people still did not know. And this time, because of the terrifying reputation of the King of Hell, the insiders wanted to weaken Jin Qinhuang's presence. It was normal that the common soldiers did not know. However, Jingwan did not intend to barge in from the beginning. She only said that she wanted to see the person in charge. These guards naturally did not dare to neglect. A prince of the imperial court. That was a high official. They left quickly, but the people who came out to greet them were also quite fast. It was a middle-aged man and an old man. Perhaps because they were old, the way they walked was still vigorous and vigorous. Jingwan could not help but take a few more glances. The two people walked in front of Jingwan and stopped when they were a few steps away. Although they were puzzled as to why a Qin Wang Fei would come to this place, they still had to follow the rules. It was just that compared to the middle-aged man's restraint, the old man seemed to be very enthusiastic towards Jingwan and her party. Jingwan and the others quickly knew the reason. It turned out that this old man was actually the military doctor of the Northeast Army. It was the old doctor who had gone to the capital with He Jinwei's family. The old doctor was nominally a military doctor, but he did not have a military status. Thus, in the Northeast, there might not be any battles for a long time. And when the Northwest was short of manpower, he brought a portion of people and came to help. Dare I ask Wang Fei Nyang, did the Wang Fu's doctor who made the special medicine come? The special medicine was not the kind that had amazing effects but would also magnify the pain countless times. That kind of medicine, in the beginning, was essentially used for interrogation. However, if the side effects could be removed, it was definitely the best medicine to use as an ordinary medicine. Gong Jiu was influenced by his master to be a doctor of the same profession, especially one who focused on saving lives, so he was usually more respectful. Greetings to the old doctor. Gong Jiu automatically stepped forward. The old doctor was probably surprised by his young age, so his eyes widened slightly. However, now was not the time to be calculative. He stepped forward and directly grabbed Gong Jiu. To be able to make such a medicine at such a young age, you must be very knowledgeable about medicine. Come, I need your help. Gong Jiu wasn't just a doctor. He was a secret guard. Even if he was good at medicine, his martial arts weren't weak either. It was impossible for an old man to drag him away. He had a master. If his master didn't say anything, how could he leave just like that? Jingwan saw this and said, Gong Jiu, you go. Yes. Jingwan looked at the middle-aged man. He was probably the real person in charge. I want to go in and take a look. I wonder if you will allow me to. Seeing that Jingwan was still polite, the slightly stiff body of the person in charge relaxed a little. They were just small fries. In the face of these nobles, they could only serve them respectfully. If they wanted to go in, they could just barge in and there was nothing they could do. They also had to be prepared for the situation inside to be too bad and cause the nobles to feel uncomfortable. If the situation was light, they would probably just be scolded. If the situation was serious, they might even lose their lives. It was really lucky to be able to meet such a person who asked for their help. Since Princess Consort has asked, then this little one will say something. The situation inside is very bad. Princess Consort is a noble person and I am afraid it will make you uncomfortable. If Princess Consort does not have a reason to go in, this little one does not recommend Princess Consort to go in. From the smell, you can roughly imagine the situation. However, since you are already standing here, your purpose must be to come here. Therefore, it is not very likely that you will leave without taking a look. If it causes you any trouble, please forgive me. Princess Consort, you are too serious. I don't deserve it. There is nothing to deserve it. After all, I did cause you trouble. The girls behind her looked at each other and saw the disbelief in each other's eyes. This Princess Consort didn't put on airs at all. She didn't look like a Princess Consort at all. As the saying goes, a higher official can crush people to death. Any small official, if it were their family members, would also be arrogant. Not to mention other things, compared with their attitude when they came here before and compared with this princess consort, they were inexplicably ashamed because they seemed to be too rude. Although it was uncomfortable, they still followed Jingwan in. Jingwan did not speak along the way and just watched quietly. Not to mention disturbing others, she even took the initiative to avoid people when she saw people carrying people over. The older they got, the deeper they went. Even the guards of the prince's mansion might not have seen a dead person before. This kind of environment had a certain influence on them, let alone the girls. On the other hand, Jingwan seemed to be getting calmer as she walked. However, her originally relaxed expression became colder and colder. Sometimes, she even went into the room to take a look. When she came out, she saw the girls covered their mouths and resisted the urge to vomit. If you don't feel well, go back. However, they were stubborn and shook their heads, unwilling to go back. Jingwan's expression became colder. If you vomit, you will cause trouble for others. They are very busy and tired, do you understand? They were stunned. They probably did not expect Jingwan's attitude to change so much. Princess consort, we will definitely endure it. Then do as you like. After turning a small part of the room, Jingwan saw Gongjiu. At this moment, he was stitching up someone's wound. His movements were very skillful. Jingwan was a little stunned for a moment. When the stitching was done, he applied a light yellow liquid. Gongjiu cleaned his hands and walked over. Princess consort. Jingwan nodded. Have you been studying wound stitching? Yes, because it is indeed very effective. Not to mention other places, it should be very useful on the battlefield. I saw that the thread you used was not prepared at the last minute. Did you bring it from the capital? Have you almost mastered this set of skills? I used the catgut suture that you mentioned. Because Prince Yu had instructed me to do so, I have been studying and organizing it. Jingwan felt that in her husband's previous life, she should have brought up the topic of wound stitching, but she did not know if it was accepted. If it was accepted, then it would definitely be popularized. Her husband had personally led the army for many years, so it was impossible for him not to know about it. Then, he should have prepared for it long ago. From the time he was conferred the title of prince, he should have made preparations in this regard. However, Gongjiu first learned about it from her. So, it was still not popularized. I thought that it would not be accepted. To sew a wound as if it was a piece of cloth, it must be absurd and ridiculous to those who did not know. Why do you say so, princess consort? Compared to losing one's life, sewing a wound is really not worth mentioning. I heard from Gongjiu that this method was first proposed by you, princess consort. Gongjiu has also confirmed that it is very effective. It is a great blessing for the soldiers. Thank you, princess consort. The old doctor said and bowed deeply to Jingwan. Jingwan quickly avoided it. Doctor, you are too kind. I just suddenly thought of it. The rest was done by Gongjiu. If I really want to thank someone, I should thank him. Princess consort, you are wrong. Many things are wrong. In fact, it is just an idea. So, princess consort, you don't have to be modest. Gongjiu said. That's right. The old doctor agreed. Let's not talk about this. Actually, I have an idea and want to say it. I wonder. Go ahead, princess consort. The old doctor said immediately. Someone who could come up with a wonderful idea now might have an idea that was very useful. Actually, I think that the environment here is a little too bad. These soldiers are already suffering from illness. If the environment is too bad, even a healthy person would feel uncomfortable, let alone them. When they feel uncomfortable, their willpower will definitely be depressed. As the saying goes, accumulated worry will lead to illness. If their willpower is depressed, it will definitely have a great impact. Besides, I have also studied some medical books. Especially the more special diseases, such as the plague, are most likely related to the bad environment. The moment these words were said, it caused quite a commotion. https://11/11807/128414440. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.